The wedding dress hung in the back of Elena Moretti's closet like a ghost, still wrapped in translucent garment bags that whispered every time she opened the door. 3 months ago, it had been the centerpiece of her future. Now it was just 20 pounds of silk and lace she couldn't afford to keep. She photographed it in the weak November light coming through her studio apartment window, trying to make the ivory fabric look less like a monument to failure. The rent notice taped to her door gave her 72 hours. 72 hours before the superintendent changed the locks, and everything she owned ended up on a Philadelphia sidewalk in the cold. The listing went live at 9 p.m. Designer wedding gown, never worn, size 6, asking $1,200 or best offer. She didn't mention why it had never been worn. Didn't mention Marcus or the text message she'd found on his phone 2 weeks before the ceremony. Some stories didn't need telling. By midnight, she had 17 inquiries. Most were lowball offers from resale shops. One was from a bride-to-be who wrote 3 paragraphs about her own upcoming wedding, as if Elena wanted to hear about someone else's happiness. She was about to close her laptop when a new message appeared. "I'll give you $2,500 cash. Tonight, what's your address?" No profile picture. Account created that day. Username, vsantoro89. Every instinct Elena had learned in 26 years of life told her this was a scam, or worse. But the rent notice was still taped to her door, and her bank account had $47.23 in it. And sometimes you made decisions because you were drowning and someone threw you a rope, even if you couldn't see who was holding the other end. She typed the address, hit send, watched the message turn from delivered to read in real time. 20 minutes, came the response. Elena stood in front of her bathroom mirror and tried to look like someone who made smart choices. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had started neat at 7 a.m. and ended chaotic at midnight. She'd lost weight in the past 3 months, the kind of weight loss that came from choosing between groceries and utilities. Her reflection looked tired and too thin and exactly like what she was, desperate. The buzzer rang at 12:17 a.m. She lifted the intercom handset with shaking fingers. "Hello, delivery for Elena Moretti." The voice was male, deep with a slight accent she couldn't place. Not threatening exactly, just certain. The voice of someone used to being obeyed. "I'll be right down." She grabbed the wedding dress, still in its bags, and took the stairs instead of the elevator. At this hour in this neighborhood, the elevator was a cage you didn't want to be trapped in. The lobby smelled like old carpet and someone's microwaved dinner. Through the glass door, she could see a black SUV idling at the curb, exhaust rising in the cold November air. A man stood on the sidewalk in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He wasn't particularly tall, maybe 5'10", but he stood like he owned the concrete under his feet. Elena pushed through the door. The cold hit her immediately. She'd forgotten her jacket in her nervousness. The man turned, and she got her first clear look at him. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and shadowed planes. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark brown, almost black, and absolutely unreadable. He looked at her the way an art appraiser might look at a painting, taking inventory, calculating value, revealing nothing. "You're Elena," not a question. "And you're," she trailed off, realizing she didn't actually have a name. "I'm the person with $2,500 cash." He gestured to the garment bags draped over her arm. "That the dress?" She nodded. Up close, she could see details she'd missed through the glass. The suit was bespoke, no question. The watch on his wrist caught the streetlight, Swiss, expensive. His shoes were Italian leather, and there was something else. A small pin on his lapel. Silver, shaped like a lion's head with a crown. He pulled an envelope from his inside pocket. Thick, cream-colored paper, not the kind of envelope you bought at CVS. "May I see the dress first? May I see the money first?" The corner of his mouth twitched. Might have been a smile, might have been something else. He opened the envelope enough for her to see the bills inside, all hundreds. Crisp and new, like they'd just come from a bank, or somewhere banks didn't ask questions. Elena unzipped the garment bag. The dress spilled out in a cascade of ivory silk, the beadwork catching the light. She'd spent 6 months of savings on this dress, had stood in a boutique with her mother and her sister, all of them crying happy tears. That memory felt like it belonged to someone else now. The man barely glanced at the dress. His eyes stayed on her face. Why are you selling it? That's not part of the transaction. Humor me. Why do you want to know? Because I'm buying a wedding dress at midnight from a woman who looks like she hasn't slept in a week, and I'm curious about the story. He said it matter-of-factly, without judgment, like he was ordering coffee and asking about the weather. The wedding got called off. I need the rent money. That's the story. She held out the dress. Do we have a deal? He took the garment bags from her with surprising gentleness, as if the fabric might shatter. Then he handed her the envelope. Count it. I trust you. That's a mistake. But he waited while she opened the envelope and riffled through the bills. 2,500s, exactly as promised. Who's this for? The question came out before she could stop it. The dress, I mean, your fiancé, sister. Neither. He draped the garment bags over his arm with the same care he might give a sleeping child. Let's call it an investment. In what? In you, Miss Morty. The way he said her last name sent ice down her spine. Not Morty like it was written on her mailbox. Morty like he knew exactly what the name meant. Morty like he knew her family history, knew her grandfather had come from Sicily, knew the old stories her grandmother whispered after too much wine at Sunday dinner. How do you know my? Go inside, Elena. Lock your doors. Don't list anything else online without vetting the buyers more carefully. He started toward the SUV, then paused. And keep the extra 1,300. Consider it a gift. Wait, what? I said 1,200. I know what you said. He opened the SUV's rear door, laying the dress carefully across the seat. But your rent notice says you're $2,500 short. I saw it taped to your door in the photo you posted. Background of the dress shot. You should be more careful what you show in pictures. Elena looked down at her phone, pulled up her own listing. There it was, in the reflection of the mirror she'd used to photograph the dress, barely visible in the corner of the frame. The pink slip taped to her apartment door, the number clearly legible if you knew what to look for. When she looked up, he was standing directly in front of her. She hadn't heard him move. Who are you? Someone who pays attention. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, matte black with silver text. No company name, just a phone number embossed on expensive cardstock. If you find yourself in trouble again, call that number. Ask for Vincent. Why would you? Because you're selling your wedding dress at midnight to pay rent, and you didn't hesitate when a stranger offered you cash, and that means you're either very stupid or very desperate. His eyes held hers. And you don't strike me as stupid. He got into the SUV. The door closed with the heavy thunk of expensive engineering. The vehicle pulled away from the curb, taillights disappearing into the Philadelphia night, and Elena stood on the sidewalk with $2,500 in cash and a business card that felt like it was burning through her pocket. She went back inside, locked the door, walked up 3 flights of stairs in a daze. The pink notice was still on her door. She pulled it down, crumpled it, threw it in the trash. Then she sat on her second-hand couch and counted the money again. All there, all real. She turned the business card over in her fingers. The paper was thick, textured. The kind of card that cost $5 a piece to print. Just the phone number and the name, Vincent. Vincent who knew her last name without her telling him. Vincent who'd spotted her rent notice in a photograph. Vincent who'd given her an extra $1,300 like it was nothing. Vincent who wore a lion's headpin and drove an SUV with tinted windows and spoke with the casual certainty of someone who'd never been told no. Elena dropped the card on her coffee table and went to bed, but she didn't sleep. She kept thinking about his eyes, the way they'd calculated and assessed and revealed nothing. The way he'd touched the dress like it mattered, even though he'd barely looked at it. The way he'd said, investment in you, like he was planting seeds and already knew what would grow. She didn't know it yet, but that midnight transaction on a Philadelphia sidewalk had just changed the trajectory of her life. The man in the charcoal suit had bought more than a wedding dress. He'd bought a connection, a thread, a tiny point of leverage in a city where leverage was currency and debt, even debt you didn't know you owed, was never forgotten. By morning, the money was deposited. The rent was paid. Elena Moretti went to her job at the non-profit arts center where she taught pottery to at-risk kids, and she told herself the strange encounter had been nothing more than a weird but lucky break. She was wrong. The card stayed on her coffee table for 3 days before she threw it away. It reappeared in her jacket pocket 2 days later, though she couldn't remember putting it there. She threw it away again. This time it stayed gone. But the phone number stayed in her head, 10 digits burned into her memory like a scar. 3 weeks passed. Elena fell into the rhythm of survival she'd perfected over the past few months. Work, groceries, bills, sleep. Repeat. She didn't hear from Vincent or whoever he really was. Didn't see the black SUV on her street. Started to believe the whole thing had been exactly what it appeared to be. A strange but ultimately harmless transaction. Then Marcus showed up. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of gray December day that never quite decides whether to rain or snow. Elena was locking up the arts center, her hands full of painted ceramic bowls from the afternoon class, when she saw him leaning against his BMW in the parking lot. "Elena," he straightened up, hands in his pockets. Still handsome in that clean-cut corporate way she'd once found attractive. Now she just saw the weakness in his jawline, the calculation in his smile. "Can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about." 5 minutes, please." She should have walked away. Should have gotten in her beat-up Honda and driven home. But there was something in his voice, an edge of desperation that mirrored the way she'd felt standing on that sidewalk with her wedding dress, and despite everything, she'd loved him once. 5 minutes. They sat on a bench near the parking lot entrance. Marcus kept his distance, which was smart of him. He'd always been smart about calculating distances, knowing exactly how far he could push before someone pushed back. "I made a mistake," he started. "The biggest mistake of my life. Jessica meant nothing. It was cold feet and stupidity and—" "Marcus," Elena cut him off. "I don't care. You have to care. We were going to get married. We had plans. You had plans, I had a fantasy. There's a difference." She stood up. "Your 5 minutes are up." "Wait." He grabbed her wrist, not hard but firm enough to stop her. "I need your help." There it was, the real reason he'd come. Elena looked down at his hand on her wrist until he let go. "I'm in trouble," Marcus said. "Real trouble, the kind that doesn't go away." "What kind?" "The kind where I owe people money. A lot of money." He ran his hand through his hair, the same nervous gesture he'd used when he told her about the affair. "I made some investments, bad ones. Borrowed from the wrong people to cover the losses." "How much?" 50,000. Elena laughed, actually laughed. "You owe someone $50,000 and you thought I could help. Marcus, I sold my wedding dress to make rent." "I know. I'm sorry, but these people—" He lowered his voice. "These aren't regular creditors. They're connected, organized, and they've given me 2 weeks to come up with the money or—" He didn't finish the sentence. "Or what? Or they start taking payment in other ways." Elena felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She'd grown up in South Philly, had heard enough stories from her grandfather before he died. Knew what connected meant. Knew what happened to people who couldn't pay their debts. "Go to the police." "I can't. Some of the money I borrowed was for—" "It's complicated. If I go to the police, I go to jail. If I don't pay, I go to the hospital. Or worse." He looked at her with those blue eyes she'd once found mesmerizing. "I thought maybe you'd know someone, your family, your grandfather's connections." "My grandfather died when I was 12 and he ran a restaurant, Marcus." "He wasn't." She stopped. Something was clicking into place. "How do you know about my grandfather's connections?" "Everyone knows the old families. The Morty name still carries weight in certain circles." "My grandfather sold pasta and meatballs." "He wasn't in the Mafia." "Maybe not officially, but he knew people, and people remember." Marcus stood up, moved closer. "Please, Elena, I'm desperate. I just need an introduction. Someone who can talk to these people, negotiate a payment plan, or I can't help you. Can't or won't. Both." She picked up her bag. "Goodbye, Marcus." She made it to her car before her hands started shaking. Sat in the driver's seat with the doors locked, watching Marcus drive away in his BMW. Her breath fogged the windows. The ceramic bowls on the passenger seat were cold under her fingers. Everyone knows the old families. The Morty name still carries weight. She'd never believed those stories. Her grandfather had been kind and funny and smelled like tomato sauce and cigars. He taught her how to make gnocchi from scratch, how to spot the freshest fish at the Italian market. He'd died of a heart attack when she was 12, and they'd buried him with full Catholic rites, and Elena had cried because she'd loved him. But she remembered other things, too. The way men in expensive suits would stop by the restaurant late at night. The way her grandfather would sometimes leave the dinner table to take phone calls in his office, his voice dropping to a murmur. The way her grandmother would cross herself and light candles on certain feast days, whispering prayers for protection. Elena drove home on autopilot, parked, climbed the stairs, unlocked her apartment door. The business card was on her coffee table, not in the trash where she'd thrown it, not in her jacket pocket, right in the center of her coffee table, as if it had been waiting for her to come home and find it. She picked it up with shaking fingers. Turned it over, the embossed number caught the light. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Hello, Miss Morty," Vincent's voice, unmistakable. "You've had a visitor." "How did you—" "I told you to be more careful. Your ex-fiancé is drowning, and drowning men pull down everyone within reach." A pause. "Did he ask you for help?" Elena sank onto her couch. "Are you watching me?" "I'm watching everyone. It's my job." Something rustled on his end of the line. "Marcus Hale owes money to some associates of mine, 50,000 to be precise. He has 11 days to pay." Associates? Business partners. The kind who don't appreciate poor credit. Elena's mouth went dry. "You're—" "Careful what you say next," Vincent interrupted. "Words have weight. Questions have consequences. Think about whether you really want the answer before you ask." She thought, then asked anyway. "Are you Mafia?" Silence stretched between them. Not empty silence, the kind that was full of calculations and decisions being made on the other end of the line. "That word is oversimplified," Vincent said finally. "But for our purposes, let's say I'm someone who maintains order in spaces where conventional law doesn't reach. Someone who makes sure debts get paid and promises get kept." Another pause. "Someone who bought your wedding dress because I was curious about the woman desperate enough to sell it at midnight." "Why?" "Because the Morty name came across my desk 3 times in 1 week. Once in connection with a property dispute in South Philly. Once in a background check for a business loan. And once in a listing for a wedding dress being sold by a woman with no connection to my world, or so I thought." His voice was almost conversational now. "Coincidences make me nervous. I investigate coincidences. And I found you. I'm not part of any world. I teach pottery to teenagers. Your grandfather was Antonio Morty. He ran the most successful Italian restaurant in South Philadelphia for 40 years. He also laundered money for the Castellano family, provided meeting space for sit-downs, and once personally negotiated a truce between 3 warring factions that prevented a bloodbath." Vincent delivered this information like he was reading from a menu. Antonio was never formally inducted, but he was respected, protected. When he died, that protection extended to his family, to your grandmother, to your mother, to you. Elena felt dizzy. "I don't believe you." "Your grandmother receives a deposit of $2,000 on the 1st of every month, always cash, always delivered by a courier. She thinks it's insurance money from your grandfather's policy." A beat. "It's not." The room tilted. Elena knew about those deposits. Her grandmother had mentioned them once, grateful for Antonio's foresight in securing their future. Insurance money, not blood money, not protection payments. "What do you want from me?" "Right now, nothing. I'm simply making sure you understand the landscape." Papers shuffled on Vincent's end. "But Marcus Hale will ask again, and when he does, you'll need to make a choice. Help him and you vouch for his debt with your family name. Refuse him and he'll likely do something desperate. Either way, you're involved now." "I didn't ask to be involved." "No one asks. But here we are." His tone shifted, became almost gentle. "The dress was beautiful, by the way. My sister will wear it at her wedding next month. She's your size, your coloring. It could have been made for her." The line went dead. Elena sat on her couch holding her phone, trying to process what she'd just learned. Her grandfather. Her family name. Protection that extended beyond the grave. A world she'd never known existed, clicking into place around her like a puzzle she didn't remember starting. The business card sat on the coffee table. She picked it up, this time really looking at it. The lion's head emblem was embossed in the corner, subtle but unmistakable. The mark of someone's authority, someone's territory. She should throw the card away again. Should block the unknown number. Should pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, she tucked the card into her wallet, behind her driver's license where she'd see it every time she opened it. The next 7 days passed in a fog of paranoia. Elena jumped at shadows, checked over her shoulder, looked for black SUVs on every corner. But Vincent didn't call again, didn't appear, didn't send any more messages. Marcus called 3 times, she didn't answer. On the 8th day, her grandmother had a stroke. Elena got the call at work. Her mother, crying, incoherent, sent Agnes hospital. ICU, come now. She drove through red lights, parked illegally, ran through the emergency room doors with her heart in her throat. Her mother met her in the ICU waiting room. Sophia Morty was 62 and looked 80. Tears had carved tracks through her makeup. She grabbed Elena's hands with desperate strength. They don't know if she'll make it through the night, Sophia whispered. The doctors say it was massive, part of her brain. She couldn't finish. Elena held her mother and thought about cash deposits on the 1st of every month. About Antonio Morty and laundered money and protection that extended beyond death. About a world where nothing was what it seemed and everything had a price. Can I see her? Her mother nodded. Led her through double doors into the sterile hell of intensive care. Machines beeped. Fluorescent lights hummed. The air smelled like disinfectant and fear. Her grandmother was barely recognizable. Rosa Morty, who'd made the best wedding soup in Philadelphia, who'd taught Elena how to crochet and curse in Italian, who'd lit candles for saints and kissed crucifixes and never missed Sunday Mass. Reduced to a small shape under white sheets, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that breathed and monitored and beeped their mechanical indifference. Elena took her grandmother's hand. The skin was paper-thin, spotted with age. The fingers were cold. I'm here, Nana, she whispered. I'm here. Rosa's eyes opened, just for a moment, barely focused, but she saw Elena, recognized her. Her lips moved. Antonio, the word was slurred, barely audible. Promise. Don't talk, Nana, save your strength. Promise. Rosa's grip tightened with surprising strength. The lion. Find the lion. Then her eyes closed, and the only sound was the mechanical breathing of the ventilator. What did she say? Sophia asked from the doorway. I don't know, something about a lion. Her mother's face went white. She's delirious. The stroke. But Elena was thinking about a silver pin shaped like a lion's head with a crown. About a business card with a phone number. About Vincent's voice saying that word, protection. She stayed at the hospital until midnight, then drove home in a daze. Climbed her stairs, unlocked her door. Someone was sitting on her couch. Elena's scream died in her throat when she recognized him. Vincent. Same charcoal suit or one identical to it. Same unreadable eyes. He held up one hand in a gesture of peace. Your door was locked, she said stupidly. How did you? I'm sorry about your grandmother. He stood slowly, non-threateningly. Rosa Morty is a good woman. Get out. I will, but first you need to hear something. He pulled a file folder from inside his jacket. Set it on the coffee table between them. Your grandmother's stroke wasn't natural. Elena felt the floor drop out from under her. What? Someone poisoned her. Small doses of a substance that triggers blood clots. Administered over the course of several weeks, probably in her food or medication. Vincent opened the folder. Inside were photographs, medical reports, pages of documentation Elena couldn't process. My people investigated after the hospital admission, found traces of the substance in her apartment, in her tea. Who would? Marcus Hale owed money to people I work with. When he couldn't pay, he tried to use your connection to buy time. Claimed the Morty name could secure his debt. My associates asked questions. Vincent's voice was flat, clinical. Marcus told them about your grandmother, about the monthly deposits, about the old protection agreements. He thought he could leverage your family's history to save himself. You're saying Marcus poisoned my grandmother? No, Marcus talked too much to the wrong people. And some of those people decided to send a message. To remind the Morty family that old protection only lasts as long as old agreements are honored. He closed the folder. Your grandfather made promises before he died. Some of those promises were never fulfilled. That debt passed to your grandmother, and now, with her in the ICU, it passes to me. Elena's voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else's body. To you, Vincent confirmed. Unless you want to walk away, disappear, change your name and leave Philadelphia and hope they don't care enough to find you. He tilted his head, studying her. But your mother is still here, your cousins, your aunt in Jersey. Walking away doesn't erase a bloodline. Elena sank onto the couch. Her hands were shaking. What did my grandfather promise? A favor, unspecified, to be called in when needed. Vincent sat down beside her, careful to maintain distance. Antonio died before the favor could be claimed. The debt went into, let's call it suspended status. Your family's protection continued as a courtesy, with the understanding that someday someone would ask. And now someone's asking. Not yet, but they're reminding you that they could, that the debt exists, that protection isn't free. He paused. Your grandmother's poisoning was a message. The next message won't be as subtle. What do I do? Vincent pulled out his phone, typed something, showed her the screen. It was a photograph of Marcus Hale, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. He was leaving an office building downtown, talking on his phone, completely unaware of being watched. You have a choice, Vincent said. Option 1, I take care of Marcus. He disappears, and with him goes the connection he made between your family and my associates. The message gets sent back. The Morty family is still under protection, and touching them has consequences. Your grandmother recovers or doesn't, but no more poison, no more messages. And option 2, you help me. Vincent locked his phone, pocketed it. There's something bigger happening. Money moving through the city in ways that don't add up. Shipments going to places they shouldn't. Someone in my organization is playing both sides, and I need to find them before they start a war. He looked at her directly. Your grandfather had a gift for seeing patterns, for noticing things others missed. The same gift that made him valuable 40 years ago. I think you might have inherited that gift. I teach pottery. You taught art therapy at a women's prison for 2 years. Wrote a thesis on using creative expression to identify trauma patterns in abuse victims. Developed a system for reading emotional states through artistic choice. Vincent's research was thorough. That's not just teaching pottery. That's reading people, seeing what they don't want seen. Elena's head was spinning. What exactly would helping you involve? Coming to work for me, legitimate work mostly. I own several businesses that need someone with your background. Art galleries, cultural centers, community programs. You'd be on payroll, fully legal, paying taxes. But occasionally I'd need you to observe, to attend meetings and tell me what you see, to look at people's behavior and tell me who's lying. You want me to spy. I want you to see there's a difference. He stood up. Think about it. You have 48 hours before I need an answer. In the meantime, your grandmother's security has been increased. No one else will get close enough to hurt her. And if I say no to both options, Vincent's expression didn't change. Then I respect your choice and withdraw my protection. You and your family navigate this world on your own. Marcus Hale continues to exist as a connection point between your name and his debts. And whoever poisoned your grandmother will know that the Morty family is vulnerable. He moved toward the door. That's not a threat, it's just reality. Wait, Elena stood up. If I help you, my grandmother is safe, my family is safe. Safe is a relative term, but protected, yes. The same protection your grandfather secured, extended and honored. Vincent opened the door, paused in the threshold. The world you just discovered has always existed. You can choose to understand it and navigate it, or you can pretend it's not there and hope that's enough. But pretending doesn't change reality. He left. The door closed with a soft click. Elena stood in her apartment, surrounded by evidence of her small, contained life. Thrift store furniture, clearance rack clothes, student loan statements on the counter, and realized that life had been an illusion. A comfortable lie she'd been telling herself while the real world operated in shadows she'd never thought to look for. She picked up the file folder Vincent had left, opened it. The medical reports were dense with terminology, but certain phrases jumped out. Unusual coagulation patterns, foreign substance detected, consistent with deliberate introduction. Photographs showed her grandmother's apartment, close-ups of tea containers and pill bottles, red circles marking items that had been tested. Someone had done this, had slowly poisoned an 84-year-old woman to send a message about debts and promises and family names that carried weight in dark rooms where conventional law didn't reach. Elena pulled out her phone, found the unknown number in her recent calls, stared at it for a long moment. Then she called. Vincent answered on the first ring. "Yes, I'll help you," Elena said, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "My grandmother gets the best care available. Private room, best doctors, whatever she needs." "Done. My mother doesn't know about any of this. As far as she's concerned, I just got a job at one of your legitimate businesses." "Agreed. And Marcus Hale doesn't disappear. I don't want that on my conscience." Silence. Then, "He'll be dealt with in other ways, but he won't be coming back to you for help." "What does that mean?" "It means he'll be encouraged to relocate, permanently, with a new understanding of which debts to pay and which names to avoid." Vincent's tone was matter-of-fact. "Does that satisfy your condition?" Elena thought about Marcus, about his weakness and his desperation, and the poison that ended up in her grandmother's tea because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Thought about justice and mercy and the space between. "Yes," she said finally. "Then we have an agreement. Be at this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. He rattled off a street in Center City. "Bring your portfolio. We're meeting with the board of the Castellano Cultural Center. You're being hired as the new program director." "Just like that? Just like that. Welcome to the family business, Miss Morty." The line went dead. Elena sat on her couch until dawn, watching the city lights through her window, thinking about the moment 3 weeks ago when she'd sold her wedding dress to a stranger on a midnight sidewalk. How that moment had been a door opening. How she'd walked through without knowing where it led. Now she knew. The door led here, to a choice between pretending and seeing, between safety in ignorance and danger in truth. She'd chosen truth, which meant everything had changed, and nothing would ever be simple again. At 8 a.m., she put on her best interview suit, the one she'd worn when she applied for the Arts Center job, back when her biggest worry was student loan payments. Gathered her portfolio, drank coffee that tasted like ashes and courage. At 8:45, she parked outside a gleaming high-rise in Center City. The Castellano Cultural Center occupied the top 3 floors. The lobby was all marble and modern art. The security desk staffed by men in suits who looked like they could break bones. With the same efficiency, they checked ID's Vincent, met her by the elevator. He wore a different suit today, navy blue, perfectly tailored, but the same unreadable expression. The lion's headpin on his lapel caught the light. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He pressed the button for the 23rd floor. "The board knows you're Antonio Morty's granddaughter. They know your background in art therapy. They don't know about our arrangement. As far as they're concerned, you're a legitimate hire with impressive credentials." "What's the actual job?" "Exactly what it says. Develop programs, work with at-risk youth, coordinate community outreach. You'll be good at it. But you'll also attend fundraisers and gallery openings, meet donors and benefactors, and you'll watch." The elevator opened onto a corridor lined with contemporary paintings. Vincent led her to a conference room where 3 people waited. 2 men and a woman, all professionally dressed, all wearing the same evaluating expression Elena had seen on Vincent's face that first night. The interview lasted an hour. They asked about her experience, her vision for community engagement, her thoughts on using art as social intervention. Elena answered honestly, found herself actually excited about the possibilities. By the time they finished, she'd almost forgotten the real reason she was there. Almost. "Thank you, Miss Morty," the woman said, extending her hand. "We'll be in touch by end of day." Vincent walked her out. In the elevator, descending, he said, "You got the job." "How do you know?" "Because I own the building and everyone in it. The interview was real. They needed to confirm you're competent, but the outcome was decided before you walked in." He pulled out a key card. "Your office is on 22. Start Monday. Salary is $80,000 a year, full benefits, signing bonus of $10,000 to cover your relocation to a better neighborhood." Elena's head spun. 3 weeks ago, she'd been selling her wedding dress for rent money. Now she was being handed a career and a salary that would change her life. "Nothing's free," she said. "What do you want in return?" "I told you. Watch people. Tell me what you see." The elevator opened to the lobby. Vincent walked her to the door. "There's a fundraiser Friday night. Black tie. You'll receive an invitation. Attend. Observe. Tell me who seems nervous, who avoids whom, who talks too long about nothing important." "That's it. That's the beginning." He held open the door. "The rest depends on what you find." Elena stepped onto the sidewalk into the bright November morning. The city looked different somehow. Same buildings, same streets, but now she saw the patterns underneath. The web of connections and debts and protection rackets operating in plain sight for anyone who knew how to look. She'd spent 26 years not looking. Those days were over. Friday night came too quickly. Elena stood in her new apartment, courtesy of Vincent's relocation bonus. A one-bedroom in a secure building with an actual doorman, and tried to make herself look like someone who belonged at a black-tie fundraiser. The dress had been delivered that morning. Midnight blue silk, designer label, her exact size. No note, no explanation. Just a dress that probably cost more than her previous month's rent and fit like it had been made for her body specifically. She put it on, looked at herself in the mirror, didn't recognize the woman staring back. The fundraiser was at the Castellano Cultural Center. Elena arrived at 7, stepping out of the town car Vincent had sent, another detail she was still processing, into a lobby transformed by flowers and candlelight. Classical music drifted from the gallery space. People in expensive clothes held expensive wine and made expensive conversation. Vincent appeared at her elbow, materialized out of the crowd like smoke. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a different century. Old money, old power, old rules. "Remember," he said quietly, "you're here to observe, not participate. Watch the edges of conversations. See who's trying too hard, who's avoiding eye contact, who keeps checking their phone. What am I looking for? You'll know it when you see it." He disappeared into the crowd, leaving Elena alone with her mission. She picked up a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking and began to circulate. The first hour was boring. Rich people talking about art they didn't understand, making donations they'd write off on their taxes. Elena smiled and nodded and kept her eyes moving, looking for whatever Vincent wanted her to find. At 8:15, she saw it. A man in his 50s, silver-haired and confident, holding court near the Rothko painting, talking loudly about market trends and investment opportunities. But his eyes kept darting to the exit. And every few minutes he'd touch his breast pocket, a small nervous gesture he probably didn't realize he was making. Elena drifted closer, caught fragments of conversation. "Shipment arrives Tuesday, right on schedule. Buyers are getting nervous about the timeline. Need to move the merchandise before anyone asks questions." Merchandise. Not art, merchandise. The man's phone buzzed. He excused himself, moved toward the balcony. Elena followed at a distance, staying in the shadows. On the balcony, the man answered his phone. "I told you not to call me here." "No, I don't have it yet. Tuesday," I said. "Because he doesn't know, and if he finds out before we're ready." He turned, saw Elena. His face went carefully blank. "Can I help you?" Cold voice, evaluating. "Sorry, I was just getting some air. This is a private conversation." "Of course. Sorry." Elena retreated, felt his eyes on her back all the way to the gallery entrance. She found Vincent on the second floor examining a sculpture. Kept her voice low. "Silver-haired man, 50s, by the Rothko. He's nervous about something arriving Tuesday. Called it merchandise. Told someone on the phone that he doesn't know and needs to keep it that way." Vincent's expression didn't change. "Good, what else?" "He's scared. The way he keeps touching his pocket, either he's carrying something he's worried about or he's worried something's missing. And he's trying too hard to seem confident, overcompensating. His name is Robert Chen. He runs my shipping operations." Vincent turned to look at her directly. "You just identified my traitor." Elena's stomach dropped. "Are you sure?" "Sure enough to act on it. Chen's been moving product through unofficial channels. Skimming profits, working with a rival family." Vincent pulled out his phone, typed something. He thought he was being careful, thought I wouldn't notice. "What happens now?" Now he gets confronted, and depending on his answers, dealt with. Vincent pocketed his phone. You should leave, go home. What happens next isn't something you need to see. What's going to happen? Justice or revenge. The terms are interchangeable in my world. He touched her arm gently. You did well tonight, Elena, better than I expected. I don't feel good about it. You're not supposed to. The day you feel good about identifying someone for punishment is the day you've lost something important. Vincent guided her toward the exit. But you did what needed to be done. Protected the organization. Prevented a war. That matters. Elena left. Rode the town car home. Climbed into her new apartment that still smelled like paint and possibility. Took off the midnight blue dress and hung it in the closet next to her thrift store work clothes. Then she sat on her couch and cried. Not for Robert Chen, who'd made his choices, but for herself. For the life she'd had before she sold a wedding dress on a midnight sidewalk. For the innocence she'd lost the moment Vincent told her about her grandfather's real business. For the door she'd walked through that couldn't be walked back through. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Your grandmother is awake. She's asking for you. Elena was at the hospital in 20 minutes. Rosa Morty looked smaller in the hospital bed, diminished by tubes and monitors. But her eyes were clear when Elena entered. Aware, knowing. Nana! Elena took her grandmother's hand, careful of the IV lines. You found the lion, Rosa whispered. Her voice was weak but certain. I knew you would. Rest, Nana, don't try to talk. Number listen. Rosa's grip tightened. Your grandfather, he thought he was protecting us. The deals he made, the promises, he thought they would keep us safe. Tears slid down her weathered cheeks. But safety has a price, always, and now you're paying it. I'm okay, Nana. No, you're not. I see it in your eyes. The weight. Rosa pulled Elena closer. Your grandfather carried that weight his whole life. It made him strong, but it made him hard. Don't let it make you hard, Elena. Stay soft where it matters. Stay human. I don't know if I can. You can, you must. Rosa's eyes were fierce. Promise me. Promise you'll remember who you are, even when the world asks you to be something else. I promise. Rosa smiled, closed her eyes. Within seconds, she was asleep, her breathing steady and strong. Elena sat beside the bed and watched her grandmother sleep and thought about promises. About the ones her grandfather had made 40 years ago and the ones Rosa had extracted from Elena tonight. About how promises were the currency of this world, worth more than money or blood or any tangible thing. She was still sitting there when Vincent arrived at midnight. He stood in the doorway, a shadow in an expensive suit, and said nothing. Just waited. Elena stood, kissed her grandmother's forehead, followed Vincent into the hall. She's recovering, Vincent said. It wasn't a question. Yes, good, that's good. He handed her a file folder. Robert Chen is talking. Gave us names, locations, documentation. Turns out he was working with the Salerno family, trying to start a price war that would destabilize our operations. What did you do to him? Nothing. Yet. He's in a safe house, cooperating, hoping cooperation will buy him mercy. Vincent's expression was unreadable. His fate depends on how much damage his betrayal caused, and on whether I believe he can be trusted again. Can he? No, but he doesn't need to know that yet. Vincent leaned against the wall. This is how it works, Elena. Information, leverage, calculated mercy, strategic punishment. Everything's a negotiation. Everyone's positioning for advantage. And the ones who survive are the ones who see the patterns before they form. I'm not sure I can do this, Elena admitted. Yes, you can. You already are. He pushed off the wall. There's a meeting Monday. Sit down with the Salerno family to discuss Chen's betrayal and prevent escalation. You'll be there. Why? Because you see things others miss. And because having Antonio Morty's granddaughter present sends a message about legacy and continuity and old agreements that still matter. Vincent started down the hall. Get some sleep. Monday's going to be interesting. He left. Elena stood in the hospital corridor surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the soft beeping of machines, and she realized she'd crossed another threshold. She wasn't just observing anymore. She was participating, becoming part of the machinery. Monday came. Elena wore a black suit and pinned her hair back and tried to look like someone who belonged in a room full of men discussing territory and betrayal and the price of broken trust. The meeting was in a private room at an Italian restaurant in South Philly. Not her grandfather's old place, but close enough that Elena could see it from the restaurant window. The building was different now, a coffee shop, gentrified and unrecognizable. But she remembered the layout. The kitchen where she'd learned to make pasta. The office where her grandfather took his mysterious phone calls. Vincent sat at the head of the table, Elena beside him. Across from them, 3 men from the Salerno family, Dominic, the patriarch, Marco, his son, and their attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Gianna who looked like she could eviscerate someone with her briefcase. "Let's be clear," Dominic started. His voice was gravelly, worn by decades of cigarettes and decisions. "We didn't sanction Chen's actions. He approached us with a proposal. We listened. That's not a crime." "You listened and then agreed to move forward," Vincent countered. "Don't insult me by pretending this was theoretical. Chen was your man, your failure. Chen was turned by your money, your promises, your plan." Vincent's voice stayed level, but Elena saw the tension in his jaw. "Which means this was an act of aggression, an attempt to undermine my operations and spark a conflict. Or it was opportunism," Gianna interjected. "A disgruntled employee shopping information. You can't hold us responsible for your internal security failures." The argument went on, parsing language, debating definitions, circling around the real issue. Did this betrayal constitute an act of war, or could it be dismissed as unfortunate but unintentional? Elena watched, listened, saw the patterns Vincent had trained her to see. Dominic kept his hands folded on the table. Calm. But his knuckles were white, gripping too tight. Marco checked his watch 3 times in 10 minutes. Anxious. And Gianna, sharp, controlled Gianna, kept touching her necklace. A small gold cross, a tell. "There's something else," Elena said quietly. Everyone stopped talking, turned to look at her. Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Miss Morty," Elena kept her eyes on Gianna. "You're Catholic." "Excuse me." "The cross, you keep touching it. Same gesture my grandmother makes when she's about to confess something difficult." Elena leaned forward. "What aren't you telling us?" Gianna's hand dropped from her necklace. "I don't know what." "She's your daughter," Elena said, looking at Dominic. "Or someone close, someone you're trying to protect. That's why you're negotiating so hard. Not because of territory or pride, because family is involved." Silence. Deep and absolute. Then Dominic laughed, actually laughed. "Jesus Christ, Antonio's granddaughter, I should have known." He looked at Vincent. "She's good." "She is," Vincent agreed. "Now answer her question." Dominic sighed, pulled a photograph from his pocket, slid it across the table. "My niece, Sophia, she's been dating Robert Chen for 6 months. Didn't know who he worked for, didn't know about any of this. When the plan started to unravel, Chen panicked. Told her everything. Now she's terrified we're going to hurt him because of her." Vincent picked up the photograph. Young woman, early 20s. Pretty. Smiling at the camera with the kind of innocence that didn't survive in this world. "Where is she now?" Vincent asked. "Safe house, Jersey, under guard." Dominic met Vincent's eyes. "I'm asking family to family for mercy. For her sake. She's a civilian, doesn't deserve to be caught in this." Elena watched Vincent calculate. Saw the gears turning behind those dark, unreadable eyes. Saw him weigh options and outcomes and the cost of mercy versus the message that needed to be sent. "Robert Chen gives us everything," Vincent said finally. "Every contact in your organization he was working with, every plan you discussed, every dollar that changed hands. He does this on camera, signed affidavit, the works." "Agreed," Dominic said. "And you pay restitution. The amount of profit you would have gained from this disruption, $500,000. Dominic flinched but nodded. "Agreed. And your niece breaks up with Chen, completely, permanently. He disappears from her life and she never looks for him." Vincent's voice was iron. "Because he's not going to jail and he's not going to a grave, but he is going to disappear. And she needs to believe he left her willingly. Can you make that happen?" "Yes. Then we have a deal." Vincent stood, offered his hand. Dominic took it, the old gesture of agreement that predated contracts and courts and conventional law. The meeting broke up. Elena followed Vincent to his SUV, her head spinning. "You let him off easy," she said once they were inside. "I let him off smart," Vincent corrected. "Killing Chen doesn't get us anything except a grieving girl and a martyr story. Making him talk and then vanish gets us intelligence and closes a security gap." He looked at her. "This is how it works. Violence is expensive. Information is profitable. Always choose profit when you can." "That's cold. That's survival." He started the engine. "But you did well in there, seeing the connection, reading the tells. That's the gift I was talking about. The one your grandfather had." Elena stared out the window as the city slid past. "I don't want this gift. Too late, you have it. Question is what you do with it." Vincent navigated through traffic with the same careful calculation he brought to everything. "You can use it to protect people, to prevent wars and negotiate peace and keep families safe. Or you can refuse to use it and watch while less careful people make worse decisions. That's not a real choice. It's the only choice any of us get." He dropped her at her apartment. Elena climbed her stairs, unlocked her door, collapsed on her couch. Her phone buzzed. Message from her mother. "Nana is coming home tomorrow. Doctors say it's a miracle." Miracle. Elena thought about Vincent's promise of protection. About the best doctors and private rooms and security that prevented more poison from reaching an 84-year-old woman. About what that protection cost and who was paying the price. She was. The realization sat heavy in her chest. She'd traded her innocence for her grandmother's life, her safety for her family's protection, her simple life teaching pottery for this complex existence, reading people's lies and watching them pay for betrayal in ways that left no bodies but changed everything. And the worst part was, she was good at it. Vincent had been right. She had the gift. Could see the patterns, read the tells, understand the unspoken currents that moved through rooms full of dangerous men. It wasn't something she'd asked for or wanted, but it was something she had, and refusing to use it didn't make it go away. 3 months passed. Elena settled into her dual life. By day, she was the program director of the Castellano Cultural Center, developing workshops, mentoring students, building partnerships with schools and community centers. The work was real and meaningful, and she was genuinely good at it. Kids responded to her. Donors funded her proposals. The center's profile grew. By night, she was Vincent's eyes and ears, attending dinners and fundraisers and meetings where legitimate business blurred into something darker. Watching, listening, reporting back on who seemed nervous, who was making moves, who couldn't be trusted. She told herself she was preventing violence, making things safer, using her grandfather's gift to protect rather than exploit. Most days she even believed it. Then came the warehouse. Vincent called her at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday in February. "I need you. Now, text you the address." "What's happening?" "Situation. Bring your observation skills." The address was in North Philly, an industrial area where legitimate shipping operations mixed with less legitimate ones. Elena parked behind Vincent's SUV, her breath fogging in the winter air. The warehouse door was open, spilling yellow light onto the frozen asphalt. Vincent met her at the entrance. "Before you go in, understand. You're going to see things tonight that you can't unsee, things that will change how you think about this work and the people in it. You can turn around right now, go home, and I won't think less of you." "What's inside?" "The reality of what we're actually protecting." He held open the door. "Your choice." Elena walked through. The warehouse floor was filled with crates. Dozens of them, stacked floor to ceiling, each marked with shipping codes that meant nothing to Elena. But it wasn't the crates that made her stomach drop. It was the women. 20 of them, maybe more. Young teenagers, most of them. Huddled together on pallets in the corner, wrapped in blankets, looking at Elena with hollow eyes that had seen too much. "What is this?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "Human trafficking operation. Chen was small time. This is what we found when we followed his leads to the real players." Vincent's voice was carved from stone. "The Salerno family claimed they didn't know. They lied. This has been running through their territory for 6 months." One of the women stood up. Maybe 19. Bruised face. Haunted eyes. She spoke in Spanish, words tumbling out too fast for Elena to catch. "She's asking if we're police," Vincent translated. asking if she's going to be deported. Elena moved forward, knelt in front of the girl. "We're not police. You're safe now. You're going to be okay." The girl started crying, collapsed against Elena's shoulder. And Elena held her, this stranger whose name she didn't know, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Who did this?" She looked up at Vincent over the girl's shaking shoulders. "Marco Salerno, Dominic's son, the one who kept checking his watch during our meeting. He was running this on the side, using his family's protection to move product that his father would never have sanctioned. Where is he now? That's why you're here." Vincent gestured to a door at the back of the warehouse. "He's in there, claiming he was set up. That someone planted these women here to frame him. I need you to tell me if he's lying." Elena carefully extracted herself from the girl's grip, handed her to one of Vincent's men, a quiet guy named Sal who spoke gentle Spanish and wrapped the girl in a new blanket. Then she followed Vincent to the back room. Marco Salerno sat in a metal chair, hands zip-tied behind his back. His expensive suit was rumpled. His face was covered in sweat despite the cold. He looked up when Elena entered, and she saw desperation in his eyes. "I don't know what this is," Marco said, voice shaking. "Someone's setting me up. My father's enemies, they want to destroy our family." "Tell me about the warehouse," Elena interrupted. "When did you lease it?" "I didn't. This isn't my property. The papers say different. Lease agreement signed by you 6 months ago." Vincent held up documents. "Your signature, your company. Forged has to be forged." Elena watched him. Watched the way his eyes darted left when he said forged. Watched his tongue dart out to wet his lips. Watched his shoulders hunch forward, making himself smaller. "You're lying," she said softly. "I'm not." "You are. You leased this warehouse. You ran this operation. And you knew exactly what was in those crates because you're the one who arranged their delivery." Elena kept her voice level, clinical. "The only question is whether you were working alone or if other people in your family were involved." Marco's face crumbled. "My father doesn't know. He'd kill me if he knew." "Please, you have to believe me." "I believe that part," Elena said. "What I don't believe is that you're sorry." "I am. You're sorry you got caught. That's different." She turned to Vincent. "He's telling the truth about his father not knowing. But he's guilty of everything else." Vincent nodded, pulled out his phone, made a call. "Dominic, your son has something to confess." The next hour was brutal. Dominic Salerno arrived with his people, saw the warehouse, saw the women. Saw his son's guilt written across his collapsing face. The old man aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "This dishonors everything," Dominic said quietly. His voice shook with rage barely contained. "Everything we built. Everything we stand for." "What do you stand for?" Elena asked. She didn't mean to say it out loud, but the words came anyway, sharp and cutting. "Because from where I'm standing, all of this," she gestured at the warehouse, the crates, the human beings trapped in the corner, "all of this is just different shades of exploitation. Maybe you draw lines, tell yourself you're better because you don't traffic in people. But you traffic in violence and fear and protection. That's just extortion by another name." The room went silent. Every man in it stared at her. Elena felt Vincent's hand on her arm, a warning, but she couldn't stop. "These girls deserve justice, real justice. Not you deciding what happens to your son because he embarrassed your family name. Not you negotiating restitution and territory and saving face. Actual consequences, prison, federal prosecution, public accountability." "That's not how this works," Dominic said. "Then how it works is broken." More silence. Then Dominic turned to Vincent. "Your consultant is naive." "My consultant is right," Vincent said quietly. "This crosses lines even we don't cross. Marco doesn't get a pass because of his last name. You'd hand him to the feds. I'd hand him to someone because keeping this quiet protects him and punishes them." Vincent gestured to the women. "And I'm not willing to make that trade." What happened next unfolded over days. Marco Salerno was delivered to federal authorities with enough evidence to ensure conviction. The women in the warehouse were placed with an organization that specialized in trafficking victims. Legitimate help, legal aid, counseling, and protection from deportation. The story leaked to the press. Federal authorities bust major trafficking operation, ran on every major outlet. Marco's arrest made national news. The Salerno family's reputation took a hit they'd never fully recover from. And Elena Moretti became the woman who'd stood in a warehouse at 2 a.m. and demanded justice when everyone else wanted to negotiate. Vincent took her to dinner a week later. Expensive restaurant, private room. He waited until after the appetizers arrived before speaking. "You made enemies," he said. "I know. Dominic Salerno blames you for his son's prosecution. He won't forgive that. I don't care. You should. He's not the only one who thinks you overstepped." Vincent set down his fork. "Some of my associates believe you've made our work harder, that you've invited federal attention we didn't need, that you prioritized your principles over pragmatic outcomes." "And what do you believe?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I believe you reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. Before it became about profit and territory and maintaining order. When it was about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves." He met her eyes. "You were right. The way we do things is broken, has been for a long time. We just got comfortable with the brokenness. So what happens now? Now things get complicated. You've established yourself as someone with principles. That makes you valuable to some people and dangerous to others." Vincent pulled out a folder, set it on the table between them. "This is a list of operations I run. Some are legitimate. Some exist in gray areas. And some," he paused, "some are things I've been doing because that's how it's always been done. Not because they're right." Elena opened the folder, scanned the contents, saw shipping manifests and property deeds and business names, saw enough to understand the scope of Vincent's empire. "I want you to audit them," Vincent said. "Look at each operation with the same eye you brought to that warehouse. Tell me what's broken, what needs to change, what needs to end." "Why?" "Because I trust your judgment. And because if we're going to survive the next decade, we need to evolve. The old ways are dying. Federal oversight is tightening. Public tolerance for this world is shrinking. We either adapt or we disappear." He leaned back. "I'd rather adapt." Elena looked at the folder, at the weight of responsibility it represented, at the chance to actually change something from the inside. "I'll do it," she said, "but on one condition." "Name it." "The women from the warehouse. I want updates on their cases. I want to know they're being taken care of. And if any of them want jobs or education or a fresh start, I want to be the one who helps make that happen." "Done." Vincent signaled for the check. "Welcome to the revolution, Miss Moretti. May we both survive it." 6 months later, Elena stood in her office at the Castellano Cultural Center and looked at the new program banner being installed in the lobby. Second Chances Initiative, providing job training and support for survivors of trafficking. The program had launched 3 months ago with funding from Vincent's organization. Legitimate funding, fully documented, passing every audit. 12 women from the warehouse had enrolled. 3 had already secured permanent employment. 2 were in college. All of them were safe. It wasn't enough. Could never be enough to undo what had been done to them. But it was something. A start. Elena's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Elena Moretti?" "Yes. This is Detective Sarah Martinez, Philadelphia PD. I'm investigating Marcus Hale's disappearance." A pause. "I understand you were engaged to him." Elena's blood went cold. "Was engaged. Past tense. We broke up months ago." "When did you last see him?" "October. He came by my work asking for money. I refused. Haven't heard from him since." "He was reported missing 3 weeks ago. His car was found at the airport, but there's no record of him boarding a flight." Papers rustled. "His bank accounts show a large withdrawal, $50,000, the day after he spoke with you." "Then nothing." Elena thought about Vincent's promise. Marcus will be dealt with in other ways. He'll be encouraged to relocate. Permanently. "I can't help you," Elena said carefully. "Like I said, we broke up. I don't know anything about his finances or his plans. But you knew he owed money to dangerous people. He mentioned something like that when he asked me for help. I told him to go to the police. Did he mention any names, organizations?" "No, and I didn't ask. It wasn't my problem." Elena kept her voice steady. "Is there anything else?" A long pause. "Not right now. But I may need to speak with you again." "I'm happy to cooperate. You have my number." The call ended. Elena set down her phone and stared at the banner in the lobby. Second chances. Did Marcus Hale deserve a second chance? Did anyone? She thought about the women in the warehouse. About Rosa recovering in her apartment surrounded by family. About Robert Chen, who'd traded his treachery for a new identity in another state. About Marco Salerno, who'd face justice but would eventually walk free because that's how the system worked for people with money and lawyers. Justice wasn't clean, wasn't simple, wasn't ever what it should be. But sometimes you could bend it, shape it, make it marginally better than the broken thing it wanted to be. Vincent appeared in her doorway. Heard you got a call from PPD. You heard fast. I hear everything. He stepped into the office, closed the door. Martinez is good police, honest. Won't stop digging just because it's inconvenient. Should I be worried? No. Marcus Hale is living in Arizona under a new name, managing a car dealership, paying his debts through wage garnishment. He's alive, employed, and far away from anyone he might have hurt. Vincent sat down across from her. But Martinez doesn't know that, and it's better for everyone if it stays mysterious. You mean better for you. I mean better for the system. Martinez will investigate, find nothing, eventually move on. Marcus gets to live. You get to stay clean. And the message gets sent. People who create problems disappear, but they don't necessarily die. Vincent's expression was almost gentle. That's growth, Elena, adaptation, the kind you asked for. By making people vanish, by giving them fresh starts instead of graves, it's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative. He stood up. Your program is doing well. The board is impressed. You're changing lives. A dozen lives, while hundreds more are still suffering. Then change more lives, that's the point. You can't fix everything, but you can fix what's in front of you. Make better choices when choices appear. Build something that lasts. Vincent moved toward the door. Your grandfather understood that, protected what he could, made peace where peace was possible. And when he couldn't prevent harm, he minimized it. That's the real gift, Elena, not seeing patterns, but knowing which battles to fight and which to let go. He left. Elena sat in her office surrounded by grants and proposals and photographs of smiling students. Evidence of good work, evidence of change. But underneath it all, the truth remained. She was part of a system that dealt in violence and fear and power. She could reform it from within, could make it less cruel, less arbitrary, less broken. But she couldn't escape it, not anymore. The door she'd walked through that midnight in November had closed behind her, and there was no going back to the woman who'd sold her wedding dress and thought rent money was the worst of her problems. That evening, Elena visited her grandmother. Rosa was home now, moving slowly but moving, stubborn and fierce and refusing to accept that she'd nearly died. You look tired, Rosa said, pouring tea in her small kitchen. I'm okay, Nana. No, you carry weight. I see it. Rosa handed her a cup. Your grandfather carried the same weight. It made him old before his time. Did you ever regret it, knowing what he was involved in? Rosa was quiet for a long moment. I regretted what it cost him, the hardness it created, but I never regretted the protection it bought, the safety. She touched Elena's cheek. We survived because of the choices he made. Not good choices, maybe, but necessary ones. How do you live with that? The moral compromise? You remember that we're human, that we do the best we can with what we're given, that perfection is for saints and everyone else just muddles through. Rosa squeezed her hand. You're trying to make things better. That's enough. It has to be enough. Elena left as the sun was setting, painting the Philadelphia skyline in shades of amber and gold. She drove through streets her grandfather had walked, past buildings that had hosted his meetings and sealed his deals. The city was the same, but she saw it differently now, saw the layers and complexities and compromises that kept it running. Her phone buzzed. Text from Vincent. Dinner tomorrow. Bringing someone you should meet. She didn't ask who. Had learned that Vincent revealed information on his timeline, not hers. The dinner was at the Italian restaurant where they'd met with the Salernos. Elena arrived to find Vincent waiting with a woman in her late 50s, elegant, sharp-eyed, wearing the kind of confidence that came from decades of surviving in spaces that didn't welcome her. Elena Moretti, meet Judge Patricia Reeves. Vincent made the introduction smoothly. Judge Reeves sits on the federal bench. She also grew up in South Philly, 3 blocks from your grandfather's restaurant. The judge extended her hand. Antonio made the best veal parmigiana in the city. Used to give me free dessert when I came in to study. Said educated women were the future. They sat, ordered, talked about the old neighborhood and how much had changed. But Elena knew this wasn't social. Vincent didn't do social. "I've been following your work at the Cultural Center," Judge Reeves said eventually. "The Trafficking Survivors Program is impressive. Real impact, measurable outcomes. The kind of initiative that deserves recognition. Thank you. I'm also aware of how it came to be." The judge's eyes were knowing. "I know who funds it. I know which warehouse those first participants came from. And I know you were the one who insisted on federal prosecution instead of quiet resolution." Elena glanced at Vincent. He gave her a barely perceptible nod. "Yes," Elena said, "I was." That took courage. Also created complications. Judge Reeves sipped her wine. "Vincent came to me afterwards, asked if there was a way to formalize what you'd done, create a legitimate pipeline from intervention to prosecution to rehabilitation, something that could operate in daylight. Is there? There could be, with the right partnerships, the right funding, and the right people running it." The judge set down her glass. "I'm proposing a task force. Federal and local law enforcement, NGOs, private funding. Focused specifically on trafficking prosecution and victim support. You'd be the civilian director. Full salary, full authority, full transparency." Elena's mind spun. "Why me?" "Because you've already proven you can navigate both worlds. Can work with people like Vincent while maintaining your principles. Can see the bigger picture while fighting for individual victims." Judge Reeves leaned forward. "And because you're Antonio Morty's granddaughter. That name carries weight in communities that don't trust law enforcement. Doors will open for you that stay closed for agents and prosecutors. You want to use my family connection. I want to honor it, turn it into something constructive." The judge's voice was firm. "Your grandfather protected people, so can you, but officially, legally, with the full force of federal law behind you." Elena looked at Vincent. "And you support this. I'm funding it. Anonymous donation, fully vetted, completely clean." He met her eyes. "This is the evolution I talked about, moving operations from shadow to light, using the connections and resources we've built for something that doesn't require moral compromise." "Nothing requires zero moral compromise," Elena countered. "There's always a cost." "True, but the cost of this is transparency, accountability, working within a system instead of around it." Vincent's expression was serious. "I won't lie, it limits my flexibility, puts scrutiny on my operations, but it's the right move, for the organization, for the city, for you."